Just so you know, this whole thing is actually a ploy by me to get you to buy a 30-year-old children's book. So. Hi, my name is Haley Whipjack, and today we're talking about Shrek! Not Shrek. Shrek! There is a difference. It is important. We will get to it. But before we get started, everybody has to leave a comment saying hi to Hermes. It's required. Forgive me for my assumptions, but I believe you have heard of the 2001 movie Shrek. You know, Shrek. It's kind of become a cultural phenomena, touchstone in the, I can do math, 21, almost 22 years since it's come out. But before Shrek was ever a movie, in fact, before it was 4 movies and 2 spin-offs and a million holiday specials, it was a book. Did you know that? Did you know that Shrek started off as a book? Because I did. And I love this book so much. The crown is a bit much, and I think it has to leave. Thank you for your service. The dragon earrings stay. This, my dear friends, is Shrek! The movie, Shrek 2001, is just Shrek, and this book is, of course, Shrek! So I will be referring to it as such. Shrek came out in 1990 and was written by William Steig. Both, maybe. William was actually a cartoonist first, and he wrote multiple children's books, and his art style is so childish and fun, and I like its colors, and I like its lines. I have looked for interview material from William Steig, but there's not a lot because he died in 2003. So as much as I want to see videos of like his processes and his philosophies about children's books, it's just not out there. But I think importantly, a lot of what he was trying to do with books comes through in the books themselves, in Shrek. So let's talk about Shrek. Shrek is the story of a young ogre named Shrek whose parents send him away. It's time for him to leave the nest. So he goes off on his horrible way. He meets a witch who tells him about a donkey he's gonna meet. He terrorizes a peasant. He has a bad dream about some children. He meets that donkey. He fights a dragon, and he goes and finds a horrible, terrible princess to fall in love with and marry, who is maybe, possibly, just as ugly as he is. Which is the goal. That's not me being insulting to the princess. That's what he's going for. It is not a complicated story, but it is a well-written story. In fact, this story, Shrek, won Best Opening Line in a children's book in 1990, awarded by Publishers Weekly. So I will actually read to you how this book opens. I'm not going to read you the whole book. This whole thing is a ploy where I'm trying to get you to buy this 30-year-old children's book. I'm not going to read it to you. I'm going to read some of it to you. Note to the audience, I am a first grade teacher, so if while I'm reading aloud, you're like, why does it sound like they're reading to children? It's because that's what I'm used to. Okay? The opening line of 1990's Shrek is, his mother was ugly, his father was ugly, but Shrek was uglier than the two of them put together. The rest of the page goes on. By the time he toddled, Shrek could spit flame a full 99 yards and vent smoke from either ear. With just a look, he cowed the reptiles in the swamp. Any snake dumb enough to bite him instantly got convulsions and died. Now, I don't know how many little boys you know. This is how they write stories. Like, the tone is set immediately. I agree. Best opening line. I know exactly what this dude is about. I would actually also like to submit that Shrek should have won Best Closing Line in 1990 as well. I don't know what his competition was like. I don't. But spoilers for the 1990s children's book Shrek. But it does end with Shrek and the princess getting married. Here they are. So here's that closing line. So they got hitched as soon as possible, and they lived horribly ever after, scaring the socks off all who fell afoul of them. That's poetry to me. All who fell afoul to them. I love it. I love it. I'm so excited for them and how horribly ever after they live. And it doesn't sound nice, but we've learned from the entire book that is exactly what Shrek wants. And I'm very happy for Shrek, and also Unnamed Princess. Good for them. There are a lot of points in this book where characters break out into rhyme schemes. Shrek doesn't do it very often, but like when he meets the donkey is speaking in limericks. The witch is speaking in rhyme. When he meets the witch, the peasant, I believe, speaks in rhyme as well. The peasant speaks in rhyme as well. But Shrek doesn't always speak in rhyme. He speaks in rhyme for a second when he's stealing the peasant's pheasant. He calls it a pleasant present. And he also speaks in rhyme when he meets Unnamed Princess. which I think is so cute. I think that's wonderful because the whole world has people speaking in rhyme, and Shrek's entire deal is that he exists outside of that world and that he likes it like that. That's where he wants to be, but he exists separate from everyone else. He doesn't speak in rhyme. Why is that peasant speaking in rhyme? Why is the witch in rhyme? Why is the donkey speaking in rhyme? But then when he meets Unnamed Princess, they are speaking in rhyme together, but it's a different rhyme scheme than has been used before, and they're actually rhyming with each other. That's beautiful. That's true love. This is a very well-written book. So Shrek won Best Opening Line. I think it should have won Best Closing Line as well. And I would actually also like to submit it for Best Middle Line. Best Line. Best Line in a children's book, 1990 or otherwise. Best Line. Fat raindrops began sizzling on Shrek's hot knob. Excuse me? I can't stress enough how out of nowhere that comes. Here's the page before it. Here's Shrek frolicking in a field with cows and stuff, and everybody's running away from him, and he's so excited to be out in the world. And then the very next page, it's raining, and that's how it starts. That's how the page starts. That's how they let you know it's raining. Fat raindrops sizzled on Shrek's hot knob. Do you mean his nose? Like, I don't understand. They probably mean like the knob on top of his head. He's got like a little thing on top of his. I don't like it. William, I don't like it. I mean, I love it. Good art disturbs the comfortable and comforts the disturbed. Also on this page, the lightning and thunder are talking to each other about how gross they think Shrek is. And then he eats the lightning. But you didn't click on this video just for however many minutes of me talking about how much I love the Shrek novel. It's not a novel. We're here to talk about what's in the book and how it translated into a movie. So we know kind of the general plot and tone, but who are the characters? Well, the big one, Shrek. He's pretty important in this book, and I'd argue he's pretty important in the movie as well. As far as Shrek's design goes, I think the one that we got, final version in the 2001 movie, is not very similar. I mean, he's green, and he's got the little ear things, but the colors and kind of what he's wearing and his face shape, it's not the same. There was a version in production that looked a lot more like this that we're going to talk about later. And this Shrek has a lot less relatable emotions than the one in the movies. He's kind of just a gross and terrible man, and he loves it. And I love that for him. But in the movie, when we were with the character for like 90 minutes and then 3 more movies, they kind of had to give him a little depth, which I agree is a good decision. Other characters in the book. Well, there's that peasant that had the pleasant present pheasant. I don't think he's in the movie. I don't know who this guy would be. That's fine. He didn't really leave an impression on me. There's this witch, which is one of the only times in this book that I get any sort of like fairy tale vibes from what's happening. And in the Shrek movie, it's very, very, very fairy tale. But this isn't. It's not even really a subversion of fairy tales. It's just kind of a story about an ogre. Also, I just realized the back of the book calls Shrek an ogre. It says, before Shrek made it on the big silver screen, there was William Steig, Shrek, a book about an ogre that leaves a swampy home to go out and see the world. Nowhere in the book does it call him an ogre. He just looks like that. It's kind of mean to call him an ogre. Anyway, there's a donkey in the book as well. He's absolutely nothing like the donkey we get in the movies, but there is a donkey. He's sort of a steed and a sidekick for a couple of pages. And there's also a dragon. Dragon! Not really dragon vibes from this, actually, but they sure do call it a dragon. So there's also this knight who's here for like 2 pages. And then there is, of course, Unnamed Princess. Now, I don't personally like the look of her, but she does seem content. I do wish the book would have given her a name. I feel like that's just kind of a sign of respect. But if she just wants to be the princess, that's fine. I'll talk a little bit more about the movie characters later, but that's who's in the book. That's the book of Shrek. That's everybody. The themes in this story are pretty simple. It's loving yourself for exactly what you are. It's reveling in that which others aren't or that others can't be. Shrek is very proud of the things that he is and does that other people aren't and don't do. Another theme is just being generally gross. And another one is Murder? Shrek does murder in this? There he is. Murdering that night guy I mentioned for a second. And before I put the book down and start gesturing with all of it, I did also just want to show you this spread. Look at that. He's in a hall of mirrors, and he's fucking stoked. He loves seeing that many of him. All of us could aspire to being that excited to seeing hundreds of ourselves staring back at us. Yes, Shrek. So that's the book. It came out in 1990. Let's make a movie. Steven Spielberg, yeah, that Steven Spielberg bought the rights to Shrek in 1991. His vision was a 2D animated movie, what everybody was doing at the time. Rumors say he wanted Bill Murray to be Shrek and Steve Martin to be Donkey. I couldn't confirm that, but multiple places I looked said that. So, rumors it is. Obviously, Shrek would not come out for 10 years. Shrek 2001 came out in 2001. You got it. So, what's the holdup? Where's my Shrek? I said I was going to put the book down. Jesus. Well, first, Spielberg had to do this thing where he opened a movie studio. You might have heard of it before. It's called DreamWorks. DreamWorks Animation is the branch that made Shrek and a bunch of other movies, but DreamWorks as a whole just makes movies. But DreamWorks SKG actually didn't open until 1994. Spielberg was a little bit busy directing Jurassic Park and Schindler's List. You may have picked up on earlier, I said DreamWorks SKG. That is actually the full name of DreamWorks SKG. 3 men created DreamWorks SKG. You'll never guess what their initials are. First up is Spielberg, one of the most influential directors of all time. He was looking for more creative control with his movies, so that's why opening up his own studio seemed like a good option for him. Katzenberg, Jeffrey Katzenberg, former Disney executive who left because of internal tensions. Walt Disney's nephew fucking hated him. An animation mogul, man who oversaw some of the most well-loved Disney properties of all time. Beauty and the Beast is the one I care about the most that he was in charge of. A great get for this as well. So Spielberg was going to kind of head the live action side, and then Katzenberg was going to be in charge of the animation. So he's going to be the one we're talking about like a lot coming up here. And last is David Geffen, important music man. Producer of Little Shop of Horrors and Beetlejuice, which we do love. He's a gay billionaire. He is a generator of prodigious amounts of pollution. According to some sources, second highest polluter in the entire world. He seems fine. I really came in here like Spielberg, Katzenberg, and some guy. I'm sorry, David, I didn't come in emotionally attached to you already, so I can't forgive your yacht pollution crimes. This isn't about you. So Steve, Jeff, and Dave got together in 1994, and they founded DreamWorks and began production not on Shrek, but on, Shrek. Jeffrey Katzenberg was very sure that he knew what he wanted from his Shrek movie, but nobody else had a clue. There was a revolving door of everybody on the project, from writers to directors to animators. They landed on writers Terry Rossio and Ted Ellett, who had worked on Aladdin and The Road to El Dorado, so that they'd worked with Katzenberg before. Rossio was very excited to do this idea of a comic fantasy where you're playing all the story elements straight, but all the characters are aware of their sort of conventions that they're playing, which I think came off very well in the movie of Shrek, and I think was a really fun direction to take their source material as well, to kind of fairy tale it up. And the directors they landed on were Andrew Adamson and Vicki Jensen. There were 2 writers, there were 2 directors, and there was one Jeffrey Katzenberg, making everybody's lives hell. Katzenberg wanted an edgy feel to the movie, but nobody knew what he meant by that, or how far they were trying to push the envelope on, like, fairy tales and fairy tale characters and what they could be without alienating the people who were going to be paying for this movie. Weird line to try and walk down. So yeah, I'd be frustrated too if my boss just told me push the envelope on a fairy tale and get weird and then kept picking at it anyway. Yeah, I'd be mad. Also, initially, it was going to be 2D animated, and then there was a point in production where they switched to 3D, to computer-generated animation, which was still really new at the time, so they were constantly having to develop new techniques to make hair, to make grass, to make anything. So it was really intensive and not as well respected as 2D animation, because 2D animation had been the king for so long. Also, there's like a cutesy anecdote I kept finding where people from production were talking about how the animators took real mud showers to get the mud physics in the mud shower scene right. I personally don't think that's a fun anecdote. That sounds kind of horrific to me, but I hope the animators had fun. I hope it was like a little spa day for them, and I hope it was helpful. So Shrek wasn't that fun to work on. No, it wasn't just not that fun to work on. It was so not fun to work on that it was used as a punishment for the other animators at DreamWorks. The studio was working on multiple movies at a time, and there was this little project, total flop, the animators far preferred working on at the time. You might have heard of it. Yeah, The Prince of Egypt, a visually stunning film that I have to imagine was amazing to get your hands on and work on. That's where everyone wanted to be. That's where they wanted to be. But if you failed on Prince of Egypt, to quote one animator, you were sent to the dungeons to work on Shrek. They literally called it the Gulag. Oh my God. It was also called Getting Shrek'd. I do love getting Shrek'd. Slowly but surely, reinventing 3D animation the whole way, desperately trying to understand what your boss means by edgy fairy tales, they were making a movie, and they were proud of that movie. And that movie was casted. Let's talk about casting early in production. If you've seen 2001's hit movie Shrek, you have seen it with the lead character portrayed by Mike Myers. He's a funny man. He does a Scottish accent. How did we get there? Because here's the thing, he was not the first person casted to play Shrek. So what happened? Well, the original actor for Shrek was Chris Farley, incredibly talented, hilarious comedian. He was one of the bad boys of SNL in the 90s. They had like a whole crew. The early version of Shrek was very based off of Farley. They were using his mannerisms. They were writing around his comedic style. The character was designed to kind of look like him. It was for Chris Farley. And Chris Farley reportedly completed about 85 to 95% of the dialogue written for him for the movie Shrek. But he never finished it. After struggling with a lot of issues, and particularly substance abuse problems for many, many years, and declining very publicly for a very long time, Chris Farley died of a drug overdose at the age of 33 in 1997. For a really long time, nobody knew what his version of this character would have really been like. We knew it was more like him, but that didn't mean anything without seeing what that meant until 2015, where some test footage was released alongside a performance from the already casted, already performed Eddie Murphy as Donkey.
Then why do you have problems expressing your wants?
I don't. I want you to shut up. See? No problem.
You're just displacing your anger.
Believe me, it's properly placed.
The studio felt that it would be in poor taste to release the movie with Farley's voice in it, especially as it was unfinished. They would have had to make changes that would have made the product in their eyes worse. On top of the poor taste thing, they also decided against using a sound-alike actor, which, thank God, I don't know if that's actually disrespectful, but for a character that was so modeled around him, and then his tragic early death, getting somebody who just sounds kind of like him to come in last minute, I don't know. No thank you. Glad we didn't do that. Anyway, sorry to be a bummer in the middle of the video, but Chris Farley was such a talent and such a tragedy, and you can't talk about the production of the movie of Shrek without mentioning his role in it, because it was such an important part. And also because I think it's really worth mentioning how great he was at what he did. And it's never the wrong time to remember what he struggled with and how it affected him and so many other people still today. So
They judge me before they even know me.
So we aren't releasing the movie with Chris Farley's dialogue, and we aren't just getting somebody who sounds like him to either like finish his dialogue or just redo the whole thing. So what are we doing? DreamWorks Animation, Jeffrey Katzenberg. It's 1997. This movie's been in production for 3 years and nobody's had a good time the whole time. What do we do? After a little bit of convincing, the studio landed on Mike Myers as their recast. He was not as well known as Chris Farley at the time, but he was on SNL. He was a comedic actor. He had some foundations. They also decided to take the character in a completely new direction. And if I was Mike Myers, I would have said, oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Please, we'll rewrite the whole movie if we have to. And they basically did. The story changed a little bit, but Shrek changed a lot of it. And not just in his voice, but in kind of the way he was portrayed. The other thing about Mike Myers' recast is that he first recorded his lines, all of his lines, in his normal Canadian accent. Which is not what Shrek sounds like.
Oh, that's not very nice.
After Mike Myers had done this, the whole movie was complete. He asked Katzenberg if he could re-record all of his lines in a Scottish accent. Why did he do that? It's like not even a good Scottish, like it's such a specific and exaggerated Scottish accent. I don't know why he looked at the character model of Shrek and went, actually, I had this wrong. I know what that guy sounds like. I'm glad he did. It's an iconic voice, and I think it did a lot for the character. And the studio agrees. They're very happy that they went through with that change. And they said they really like found the character through that voice change. But, oh my God, that had to be wildly expensive. Mike Myers has come on record being like, it wasn't expensive. I got paid the same. For everybody else. It's not free to stand there and record your lines with like the voice director and the producer and the people running the booth. What are you talking about? It was the same amount of money for you. I just can't believe they went through with it. After such a long and like fraught production. This is like the year 2000. Movie's been in production for what, 6 years? Yeah, we'll re-record all the main characters' dialogue in a wildly different shouted accent. Fine. If you want to. Good for them. Good for them. I love going for weird ideas. I love swinging for the absolute fences. Good for them. And it paid off. It absolutely paid off. Shrek 2001 won Best Animated Movie at the 2002 Oscars. They were nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay at the 2002 Oscars. Yes, will. I mean, I guess yes to the writers of the movie, but also yes, will. And worldwide, so domestic and international box offices, the movie made like $500 million. I would say it was all good calls in the end. It's also the movie that legitimized DreamWorks Animation and kind of bumped them up to the level that Disney was at, which was probably really validating in like a really petty way for Katzenberg. And I can appreciate that. I think that's fun. So we did it. We made a movie and it was a good movie. And now we're going to make 3 more movies and 2 spin-off movies and a bunch of holiday specials. So I want to go back. To why I'm here. Because I want you to buy and read a 30-year-old children's book written by William Steig. I really liked reading this book knowing what they did with the characters in the movie because it made it funnier. And it also made me think of the ways that some of these characters and things could have been incorporated into the movie if we lived in a different timeline. For example, where's this witch in the movie? Where is she? She seems so sweet. I love her. We couldn't have put her in the movie, Jeff? Come on. Or like, I think it's so funny that somebody looked at these 2 pages of this donkey and went, yes, that is the secondary character. They are best friends. They're so right for that. Or like dragon, like I mentioned earlier, this is not even really a dragon that I'm seeing in the book here. In the movie, dragon got, and I'm so sorry, there's no better word for this, yassified. And thank God. For donkey's sake, if not mine. And like Lord Farquaad is not in this book. He was fully a creation for the movie. Someone in the studio decided it would be better if Shrek was not looking for his own wife, but sort of fell into love. The princess in here does not turn into a beast and is sometimes a human. She's always a beast, and he loves that about her. Shrek in the movie is always grumpy. Shrek in the book is stoked to be alive at all times. He's so happy to be exactly this guy, exactly where he is. I respect the hell out of him. But you know, in every version of this story, what we gotta do is get our swamp. That is what we gotta do. He's looking for his own swamp in this one. He's trying to get his swamp back in the movie. I do think they should have gotten Best Adapted Screenplay. I do. Because they made such a wildly different story, keeping elements recognizable from this very good book. Closing it. Wrapping it up. Production of the movie changed Shrek a lot. And we're going to get into future stories told in the Shrek franchise in a later video. But the most important thing from this whole video is this. William Steig loved the movie. Loved the movie. He died in 2003, so he never saw its many sequels and spin-offs, but he did see Shrek 2001, the movie that had been in production for like 7 years, that the rights had been bought to 10 years before. He got to see the movie, and he loved it. His story, with such a specific philosophy and style and tone that is so difficult to adapt and, quite frankly, nearly ruined the lives of many people in the animation industry trying to adapt it, was a global success, a cultural phenomenon that he got to see before he died. When asked what he thought of the Shrek movie, William Steig was quoted as saying, "It's vulgar. It's disgusting. I loved it." And that's what matters to me. The moment I found out that it was a book, I wanted to know what the author thought of the movie. And the fact that he loved it, that he thought it was wonderful, that he probably really appreciated all the time they put into those mud physics taking their mud showers, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And that's why I want you to buy and read this 30-year-old children's book. I got this used for like $6, and I only read you a couple pages. So stay tuned for a future video where I dive into the entire movie franchise, which means I will be watching and discussing Shrek 2001, Shrek 2, 2004, Shrek the Third, 2007, and Shrek Forever After 2010, as well as Shrek the Halls, 2007, and Scared Shrekless, 2010. Also, Shrek the Musical, 2008. And Puss in Boots, 2011, and Puss in Boots The Last Wish, 2022. Like maybe all in one video. So prepare yourself. Expect that to take me a while and to maybe not be the next thing on this channel, but to be here eventually. This is the prequel to that. Thanks for indulging me while I talk about children's books I really like and why I like them, and also how movies are made. I don't know if any of that made any sense to you, but I really liked putting it all together. If you want to find me elsewhere in the world, you can find me on TikTok at WhipJack, WHIP-Jack. You can find me on Twitter, if it still exists, at WhipJack, WHIPPED. Jack. You can find my podcast, Unprepared Casters. It's a D&D actual play show. And you can also always, blah, 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 blah. Always find me here. Hey! I really thought the crown was going to last longer. And then it really hurt and tried to fall off my head, so it didn't. What is this? That's disgusting.